Alright, so this is a key to worksheet section 2.2 part 5, and in these problems you'll be finding the difference quotient for each of these functions. Alright, so remember the formula for difference quotient is listed, so f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. Now, what you need to do first is kind of spend some time and figure out what this part is. Find out what f of x plus h is. So I'm going to go ahead right here and just go ahead and rewrite this over. So f of x equals 5x minus 3. And I want to find f of x plus h. So remember what that means is where we see the variable x, you're going to substitute x plus h. So I get 5 times, in place of x, I'm going to substitute x plus h, and then minus 3, and then I'm going to distribute. So I get 5x plus 5h minus 3. So that right here, this right here, is this. So I'm going to come over here, I'm just going to rewrite the difference quotient, the formula. So f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h equal. Now remember, at each step, make sure you say divide by h. Mathematically, you got to make sure that that is equivalent. All these statements are equivalent. So this, in place of this, I'm going to substitute this. I'm going to substitute those three terms. So 5x plus 5h minus 3, and then I'm subtracting the function f of x. But we got to put that in parentheses because I'm subtracting all of these terms. So I'm going to say minus f of x, minus 5x minus 3 in parentheses, all divided by h. You have to say divide by h equal 5x plus 5h minus 3. Now I'm going to distribute the negative 3 here. Take the opposite or distribute the negative 1, however you want to think about this. Minus 5x plus 3 divided by h. Now it's at this point when you've distributed the negative through f of x that all the terms that does not have a factor of h. So you see that 5x, there's no factor of h in it. So its opposite better be listed in the numerator. So that way you can cancel those terms out. That their sum adds up to be 0. So for example, 5x, its opposite is here. 5x and a negative 5x is 0. This has a factor of h, it stays. This does not have a factor of h, so a negative 3, you better see a positive 3, and you do, it's here. So when you add them up, you get 0. And so whatever is left in the numerator has a factor of h. So I get 5h divided by h. And then you reduce. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this over. So then h and h is 1, h and h is 1, and you're left with 5. So the difference quotient for this function is just 5. Now, in the next course, you'll see what that means in terms of the slope of a secant line and dealing with derivatives. So that's going to come into play in another course. Okay, so over here, let's do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite f of x over here so I can do the work there. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of just do this. So f of x is 3x squared minus 4x. And I want to find, remember, always find this first. Find f of x plus h first. Do the work here. So f of x plus h, that's going to be the one that's going to take the more careful work. You have to be very careful when you do this one. Okay, so where we see the variable x, you have to replace it with x plus h. That's what that means. So this becomes 3 times x plus h, but that's being squared, minus 4 times, in parentheses, x plus h. Okay? All right, now, remember, you can distribute here because that has an exponent of 1, but you cannot distribute here. It's mathematically incorrect, so don't distribute this. Don't say 3 times x and 3 times h, because according to order of operations, we have to square first before we distribute. So off to the side, let's figure out what x plus h squared is. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. So x plus h squared means x plus h times x plus h. And so I'm multiplying two binomials, so I'm going to use the FOIL method. So x times x is x squared. The outer is xh. The inner is also xh. Since the binomials are the same, the outer and inner better be the same. And then the last, a positive h times a positive h is a positive h squared. Combine my terms, I get x squared. And I have two of these, so that's 2xh plus h squared. So whenever you have a quadratic function, which is what this is. See, this was linear, this is quadratic. Whenever you have a quadratic function, at some point you are going to be squaring x plus h. So you are going to have something like this. That is always going to be equal to this. So if you have several of these, don't keep multiplying this out because it's always going to be the same. X plus h squared is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Okay? Now, a common mistake people make, though, is they don't think about this, about having this being three terms, a trinomial. The mistake they'll make is they'll say x squared plus h squared, without even thinking. So it's a good idea to, if you are going to make that mistake, you write it out like this, and then FOIL it, and you'll see you will get three terms and not two. Okay, so do not say this is not equal to, don't say x squared plus h squared. That's not true. Okay? Alright, so now what you're going to do next is, at this point, you're going to replace x plus h squared with what we just found right here. So, but again, this is multiplying by 3. So you get 3 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared right here. And then we distribute the negative 4 through here, so minus 4x minus 4h. Distributing 3 now, I get 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared minus 4x minus 4h. Okay, so that is f of x plus h, so those terms. And I can't combine anything because all these terms don't have, they're not like terms. You might say, well, this has an x in it, this has an x, but the problem is that this also has a factor of h and this does not, so those are not like terms. Alright, so none of these are like terms. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the difference quotient here. I'm going to do the work for that. So we're going to get f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Okay, don't forget, you got to see divide by h. Alright, equal. Okay, so this is all of this. So we just found f of x plus h. That's these terms right here. So in the numerator, I'm going to have 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared minus 4x minus 4h minus, and then the function f of x in parentheses because you have to distribute the negative through there. So it's 3x squared minus 4x all over h. Alright, now this next step, we're just going to distribute this. So rewrite everything else over. 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared minus 4x minus 4h, and then when I distribute the negative 1 through there, I get minus 3x squared plus 4x all over h. Okay, so it's at this point where the terms that doesn't have a factor of x better cancel out with its opposite. So 3x squared, negative 3x squared. This has a factor of h, this has a factor of h, this does not. Negative 4x, positive 4x, and this has a factor of h. So there are three terms that has a factor of h. So in my numerator, I'm going to now have 6xh plus 3h squared minus 4h over h. So that's where I'm at. Okay, so in a previous course and also in this course, you talked about factoring. So if you look at all these three terms right here, they have an h in common. So I'm going to factor out an h. So I get h times, when I factor out an h from here, I'm left with 6x. And you can always check yourself. H times 6x is 6xh. Plus, when I factor out an h from here, I get 3h. And always check yourself. H times 3h is 3h squared. And then minus 4, check yourself. H times negative 4 is a negative 4h. All over h. And now divide these out. And you're left with what's in parentheses, 6x plus 3h minus 4. And that's your answer. So that's the difference quotient for this function right here. So 6x plus 3h minus 4. Alright, number 3. Okay, same thing. So again, we're going to find f of x plus h first. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this function. So I get f of x equals negative 4x squared plus 2x minus 1. So f of x plus h. So wherever you see the variable x, I'm going to substitute x plus h. So I get negative 4 times x plus h squared plus 2 times x plus h minus 1. Alright, so wherever you see the variable x, I substitute x plus h. So negative 4 x squared, x became x plus h, plus 2x, x became x plus h, and then minus 1. Alright, now, squaring this, which we already know is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, but that's being multiplied by negative 4, so you get negative 4 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. So remember, we already found this. That was the same thing as this right here. Distributing to 2, positive 2, I get plus 2x plus 2h and then minus 1. Distribute the negative 4 now, I get negative 4x squared minus 8xh minus 4h squared and then plus 2x plus 2h minus 1. And again, none of these terms here are like terms, so I can't combine anything. But I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the difference quotient here. So f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Alright, so I just found this. This is this right here. That's all these terms. I'm going to put those terms in this place. So negative 4x squared minus 8x h minus 4h squared plus 2x plus 2h minus 1, and then subtract. I'm going to have to go do this, and then subtract this function. So minus 4x squared plus 2x minus 1, all divided by h. You must do that. Equal. Okay, now distribute the negative through here. I'm going to get negative 4x squared minus 8xh minus 4h squared plus 2x plus 2h minus 1. And then when I distribute the negative 1, now negative 1 times a negative 4x squared is a positive 4x squared. And also you can think of it as adding the opposite. A negative 1 times a positive 2x is a negative 2x. And a negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. And if you're doing this correctly, every term that doesn't have a factor of h, its opposite better be there. So that way when you add them up, you get 0. So negative 4x squared and a positive 4x squared is 0. This has a factor of h, this has a factor of h, this does not. A positive 2x and a negative 2x is 0. This has a factor of h, this does not. A negative 1 and a positive 1 is 0. So those three terms you have left, that have a factor of h. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite them. Negative 8xh minus 4h squared plus 2h, all divided by h. And at this point, I'm going to factor out an h just like I did here. They're all going to look almost identical, those quadratic functions. See? Almost look identical. So you take out an h. When I say look, I mean the process. Okay, so take out an h, you're going to factor out an h, you get h times negative 8x minus 4h. And always check yourself, h times negative 8x is negative 8xh. H times negative 4h is negative 4h squared plus 2. H times 2 is 2h, all divided by h. Now reduce, and you have your answer. Negative 8x minus 4h plus 2. So that's your difference quotient. And again, it's going to mean something in the next course, or in business calc or engineering calculus. Okay, now let's look at this one. So this is also quadratic. So we're going to find f of x plus h first, and we'll go ahead and rewrite this function right here. Okay, so I'm going to find f of x plus h. I'm going to do the work here. So where we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute x plus h. So I get 5 times x plus h squared plus 3. Now this part I already know from previous problem. X plus h squared is going to be 5 times h plus h squared is going to be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. And then plus the 3, distributing the 5, I get 5x squared plus 10xh plus 5h squared plus 3. Okay, so that is f of x plus h. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the difference quotient here. So f of x plus h minus f of x all over h equal. Okay, so that I'm going to replace with this. So 5x squared plus 10xh plus 5h squared plus 3. And I'm going to subtract the function 5x squared plus 3, just like this, all divided by h. Then we distribute the negative 1 through here, so I get 5x squared plus 10xh plus 5h squared plus 3 minus 5x squared minus 3, all divided by h. Now it's at this point where things need to be canceled. So 5x squared and a negative 5x squared is 0. This has a factor of h, this has a factor of h, this does not. Positive 3, negative 3 is 0. Alright, so these, the terms that are left, in this case there are two terms, they both have a factor of h. Alright, so you're going to rewrite it just like this, divided by h. Now you're going to factor out the h here, so that's h times 10x plus 5h divided by h. And then you divide out these, and then you're left with 10x plus 5h. Alright, so that's the key to worksheet 2.2, part 5, which is on the difference quotient. Notice this was linear and the other three were quadratic.